we say, well, this is what we want you to do. And if you do it, we'll prop up your dictator and we'll send you a lot of money. But if you don't do what we do, we're going to kill you and bomb you. Now, why shouldn't we have a third option? Why shouldn't we say, why don't we just mind our own business? Nation building, we don't become the policemen of the world, but we don't become isolationists. They want to give us a bad term, say, oh, you people are just a bunch of isolationists. Guess who the isolationists are? The ones who are looking for war. They're the ones who put on the sanctions on the country that lead up to the war. At the height of the Cold War, I was drafted in 1962 during the missile crisis in Cuba. And that was a tough period of time. Missiles in Cuba, missiles pointing at each other, 30,000 the Soviets had. But what did they do? They actually, Kennedy actually talked to Khrushchev and say, hey, maybe we ought to back down. Neither one of us needs a nuclear exchange. So they backed down, but they talked to each other. We refused to even talk to the Iranians. Possibly we could work something out, but this whole idea that we have to bomb and declare war and go to war against the Iranians doesn't make any sense at all, and it jeopardizes. Mention a lot about this choice. One, we give them a lot of money. The other one, we send them bombs. But in Pakistan, actually, there's a third option that we've looked at. We are allies, so to speak, with the Pakistani government. And we give them a lot of money, billions of dollars. At the same time, we're dropping missiles and bombs on them continuously. So we do both to them. So it's time that we just look for this other option, and that is getting along with people in a lot different way. Just think of how much better things are with Vietnam. During the 60s, when I was in the service, we had the Vietnam War going on. What a tragedy. 60,000 Americans killed. The French had been there 10 years. We were there another 10 years. 1 million Vietnamese died. So we lose the war, we leave, and the reason we were there was to stop the domino effect of communism. Well, where are the communists now? It's a failed system. The Soviet system collapsed, the Chinese had become our bankers, and we trade with Vietnam. So as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty good evidence that a lot more can be achieved in peace than in war. In Washington, as it is in the medical care, what is the degree that the government should be involved? But in foreign policy, this is the same thing. There's a big debate going on. But if they don't change policy, they say, which country should we invade next? And just pick and choose. But they endorse this whole concept of interventionism. But the whole idea of trying to write us off as being isolationists, I think it's time, now that the Cold War is over, don't you think it's about time we started trading with Cuba and traveling back and forth with Cuba? $4 trillion of additional debt because of the wars that have been going on. So not only is it a moral issue and a constitutional issue, it's obviously an economic issue. We didn't have to fight the Soviets. They collapsed because they had a failed economic system. But just think of what the difference would be in this country as far as prosperity and the wealth of the middle class and the ability to take care of sick people and education, all these things. What if we would have only had people in Washington, D.C. who actually had read the Constitution and followed the Constitution? Article 1, Section 8 is not too difficult to read and understand, and it's very precise on how we go to war and who makes the decision. You go to war when it's declared. You don't go to war at the whims of a president or an administration. By the people going through their representatives. But when the Secretary of Defense, Panetta, was asked the other day, where do you get this authority? You're getting ready, you know, you're in Libya and we're in all these countries, where do you get this authority? He says, you get it from the international governments. You get it from the United Nations or NATO. That is the giving up of national sovereignty and deferring to even bigger government. We have enough problems worrying about how big the federal government is, intrusive in our state governments and our local governments. We don't need another level of government higher up in the United Nations and the IMF. One of my meager proposals for the budget in the first year is to cut $1 trillion. You know that. Now that makes a lot of people nervous, and they said, oh yes, but what if all these troops come home? Won't that increase the unemployment? And cutting this money, I said, if you cut $1 trillion out of the budget and you bring your troops home, guess what? That money gets spent here at home. It doesn't get spent overseas. One example to look at statistically is what happened after World War II. There were 10 million in the military, and they wanted out of the war. It was over and done with. But the war was declared, it was won, and it was expected that the men and women would come home and get out of the service. And they had 10 million. And the Keynesian economists were wringing their hands, and they said, oh, this will be terrible. There will all be unemployment. We have to have jobs programs and all this. Well, they came home so quickly, they didn't have time to organize another jobs programs as they had going in the 30s. So guess what happened? The spending was cut by 60%, taxes went down 30%, and all of a sudden the Depression ended. One of the myths that we have heard for so long, and we still hear it at times, is that if you have a recession and you foolishly turn it into a depression that we seem to be working on right now, that the ultimate way you get out of depressions is you have a war. And their argument is, well, everybody's employed. Sure, everybody's employed, but they're getting shot at and they're getting killed. That's a heck of a way to cut down your unemployment rate. What you need to have full employment is to get the government off our backs and out of our wallets and out of our lives and let them